Welcome to Legacy Coins, and before we dive in, I want you to stop whatever you are doing right now, because what you are about to hear could completely change the way you look at the loose change sitting in your drawer, your car, or maybe even in an old jar tucked away in your attic. Imagine reaching into a forgotten collection, pulling out what looks like a perfectly ordinary quarter, and discovering that this tiny, unassuming coin, a $quarter, the kind you have handed to parking meters and vending machines without a second thought, is secretly worth more than a luxury penthouse in Manhattan, more than a private jet, more than most people will earn in 10 lifetimes combined. We are talking about the 1980 D quarter dollar, and by the time this video is over, you're going to understand exactly why collectors lose sleep over this coin, why auction houses go absolutely silent when one is brought to the floor, and why the people who have found one describe the moment as the single most surreal experience of their lives. And yes, we said the value out loud. This coin has been estimated and recorded at a staggering $124.5 million. Let that number settle in for a moment. $124.5 million for a quarter. A single 25-cent piece that was minted in Denver in 1980 and theoretically could have passed through hundreds of thousands of hands before someone finally looked closely enough to realize what they were holding. But here is the thing. Before we go any deeper into the full story of this extraordinary coin, I need you to stay with us until the very end of this video, because we have two more coins coming up after this one, coins that were minted just a decade and a half later, and I promise you, I absolutely promise you, that what those coins are worth will make your jaw drop all over again. We're not going to spoil anything right now, but let's just say that what comes next in this video is going to make the $124.5 million coin look like it has some serious competition. So do not go anywhere. Do not skip ahead. Every second of this video is worth your time, and here is why. The 1980 D quarter dollar is not just a coin. It is a story. A story that begins in the Denver Mint during one of the most turbulent economic periods in modern American history. The year 1980 was a strange and electric time in the United States. Inflation was at record highs. The country was reeling from energy crises, and the mint was under enormous pressure to produce coins quickly, efficiently, and in massive quantities to keep up with the demands of everyday commerce. It was in this environment, rushed, pressured, and imperfect, that the conditions were set for something extraordinary to happen. The Denver Mint, identified by the small D mint mark stamped on every coin it produces, was running its presses at full capacity during this period. And it is precisely in moments of high-volume production that the most incredible and valuable errors and rarities tend to slip through the cracks. Now, when we talk about what makes a specific 1980 D quarter worth $124.5 million, we have to understand the layered complexity of what coin grading and rarity truly means. First, there is the matter of the strike quality. In 1980, a small number of quarters produced at the Denver Mint were struck using dies that had been either over-polished or improperly prepared, resulting in what numismatists call a proof-like or deep cameo finish on coins that were never intended to carry that kind of surface. These coins, when they emerge from circulation unscathed, carry an almost mirror-like brilliance that makes them look less like pocket change and more like works of art. When one of these coins also happens to carry a doubling error, where the design elements appear to be slightly duplicated due to a misalignment during the hubbing process, the value multiplies exponentially. And then, on top of that, imagine this coin surviving decades without a single significant scratch, contact mark, or environmental damage. A coin like that, certified by the top grading services in the world like PCGS or NGC at the absolute highest grades, enters a category that most collectors never even get to see in person. The 1980 D quarter has reportedly surfaced in exactly such condition, and the bidding war that followed in the private and semi-private auction world sent shockwaves through the numismatic community. Dealers who have been in the business for 40 years said they had never seen anything quite like it. And here is the part that makes this story truly unforgettable. The person who originally found this coin reportedly did not know what they had for years. It sat in a collection, loosely organized and largely forgotten, until a family member decided to have the coins appraised out of curiosity. The appraiser's hands reportedly trembled when he turned the coin over under his loupe. That moment, that single turning point, is what every coin collector dreams about, and it is what makes the hunt so irresistible. Because the truth is, millions of 1980 D quarters were minted. Hundreds of millions, in fact. The Denver Mint was prolific that year. But within that ocean of ordinary coins, a tiny handful exist with a precise combination of characteristics that elevate them from common change to priceless treasures. The challenge and the obsession is finding them. Coin roll hunting, estate sale digging, old collection sorting. These are the treasure hunts of our modern age, and the 1980 D quarter is one of the greatest prizes in that world. Now let's talk about what specifically drives the value so astronomically high. Beyond the error and the grade, there is the matter of provenance. A coin with a well-documented history, known previous owners, auction records, certification history, is worth significantly more than an identical coin with no paper trail. The most valuable 1980 D quarters carry stories. They have been somewhere, held by someone notable, or discovered in a way that adds a layer of legend to their identity. Collectors are not just buying metal and design. They are buying history, mystery, and the thrill of ownership. There's also the factor of population reports. Grading services keep meticulous records of how many coins at each grade level have been certified, and when the population of a coin at the top grade is 1, or 2, or 3, that scarcity alone drives prices into the stratosphere. If only a single example of the 1980 D quarter exists in the condition that commands $124.5 million, then the buyer is not just purchasing a coin. They are purchasing something that is, in the truest sense, one of a kind on this planet. And I want you to think about that for a moment, because we live in a world where uniqueness is almost impossible. Everything is mass-produced, replicated, and available in infinite supply. But this coin, this one little quarter that once lived in someone's pocket, is singular. There is nothing else like it anywhere in the world. That kind of absolute uniqueness has a value that goes beyond economics and enters the realm of philosophy. People have paid extraordinary sums for paintings, for manuscripts, for artifacts that represent a moment frozen in time. And this coin is all of those things simultaneously. It is a piece of American economic history, a manufacturing anomaly, a survivor, and an artwork. Now, I know some of you are already itching to go check your coin collections, and I strongly encourage that. But before you do, stay with us because we're nowhere near done today. We have 2 more coins on this list that we're going to cover right here in this video. And I'm going to tell you this much. They're both quarter dollars as well, and they're both from the 1990s, and their stories are going to bring up everything we have talked about today, and then raise the stakes even higher. The values attached to those coins are numbers that I genuinely hesitated to say out loud, because they sound almost impossible, and yet they are real. They are documented, and they're the kind of numbers that redefine what it means to hold a piece of history in your hand. So do not touch that back button. Do not close this tab. We are just getting started, and the best is absolutely yet to come. The 1980 D quarter has already shown us that ordinary moments in history can produce extraordinary treasures. But what if the 1990s produced something even more extraordinary? What if the errors, the rarities, and the conditions aligned even more perfectly in a later decade to create coins that surpass even this one in collector frenzy and auction drama? We're about to find out together, And I promise you, you're going to want to be here for every single word. And if you thought this one was valuable, the next coin is even more unbelievable. So stay right here because we're moving on to the 1995 D quarter dollar next, and what we are about to reveal will absolutely take your breath away. Next, 1995 D quarter dollar. And if you thought the story of a 1980 D quarter was already enough to make your heart race, I need you to buckle up right now, because what we are about to uncover is the kind of numismatic revelation that makes even the most seasoned coin dealers put down their loupes and simply stare in disbelief. Picture this. It is a quiet Tuesday morning, somewhere in the middle of America, and an ordinary person is going through a box of old coins that belong to a grandparent, fully expecting to find nothing more than sentimental value and maybe a few silver Roosevelt dimes worth a couple of dollars each, when suddenly, tucked between two completely unremarkable state quarters, something catches the light in a way that feels different, feels wrong, feels almost supernatural in its perfection. And that something is a 1995 D quarter dollar that would go on to be valued at $132.5 million, making it one of the most jaw-dropping, conversation-stopping, life-altering coin discoveries in the entire recorded history of American numismatics. $132.5 million. For a quarter minted in Denver in 1995, a coin that, at face value, is worth exactly 25 cents. And before we go any further, I want to remind you, we still have one more coin coming up after this one, and I'm not going to tell you what it is worth just yet, but I'll tell you this. By the end of this video, you're going to feel like the ground has shifted beneath your feet, because the final coin we are covering today carries a value that even surpasses this one. And the story behind it is the kind of thing that people in the coin world talk about in hushed, almost reverent tones. So stay with us. Do not go anywhere, because the grand finale of today's video is something you absolutely cannot miss. But right now, let's give a 1995 D quarter dollar the full, extraordinary story it deserves. To truly understand why this coin commands such an astonishing valuation, you have to understand the world that produced it. The mid-1990s were a fascinating and transformative era for American coinage. The United States Mint was on the cusp of one of the most ambitious coin programs in its history, the 50-state quarters program, which would launch in 1999 and completely revolutionize the way ordinary Americans interacted with their pocket change. But in 1995, that program had not yet begun, and the Denver Mint was still producing the classic Washington quarter design that had been in use since 1932. The same dignified profile of George Washington on the obverse, the same heraldic eagle on the reverse, a design so familiar that most people looked at it and registered absolutely nothing. And that familiarity, that invisibility, is precisely what allowed something extraordinary to slip through unnoticed. The Denver Mint in 1995 was operating at the kind of production scale that would make your head spin. Hundreds of millions of quarters were being struck that year to meet the enormous demands of an expanding economy, a growing population, and an insatiable appetite for coinage across every sector of American commerce. When you're operating at that volume, when presses are running around the clock and dies are being prepared, used, and replaced at a furious pace, the probability of something going wrong, or perhaps more accurately, something going spectacularly, unexpectedly, and valuably right, increases dramatically. And in 1995, the stars aligned in a way that produced a coin unlike anything that had come before it from the Denver facility. What sets the most valuable specimens of the 1995 D quarter apart from the hundreds of millions of ordinary examples begins with the die preparation process. In the mid-1990s, the Mint was experimenting with new polishing and finishing techniques for its working dies, and in a small number of cases, These techniques produce dies with surfaces so extraordinarily smooth and reflective that the coins struck from them carried a depth of field and a mirror-like quality that was never intended for circulation coinage. These coins, when they exist in pristine, uncirculated condition, look less like quarters and more like miniature sculptures. Every detail of Washington's portrait rendered with a sharpness and clarity that seems almost impossible for a coin mint to rattle around in someone's pocket. But surface quality alone, while remarkable, would not be enough to push a coin into the nine-figure valuation territory. What elevates the most prized 1995 D quarters into a league entirely of their own is the presence of a dramatic and visually stunning doubling error on the obverse of the coin. Double die errors occur during the hubbing process, when the working die used to strike coins is itself created by pressing a hub, a hardened steel device bearing the coin's design, into a softer die blank. If this process is repeated and the hub shifts even slightly between impressions, the resulting die will carry a doubled image of the design, and every coin struck from that die will show the same doubling. On the most spectacular examples of the 1995 D quarter, this doubling is not subtle. It is bold, dramatic, and unmistakable under even mild magnification. The date, the motto, the lettering, and portions of Washington's portrait all showing a clear, separated secondary image that makes the coin look almost three-dimensional when viewed under the right lighting conditions. Numismatists who first examined verified examples of this variety reportedly had the same reaction: a sharp intake of breath, followed by a long silence, followed by the kind of careful, methodical examination that tells you a person is trying very hard not to get too excited before they are absolutely certain of what they are seeing. And when they were certain, when the grading was complete and the population report confirmed that the finest known example of this variety stood completely alone at the top of the condition census, the valuation that followed reflected not just the rarity of the coin, but the absolute singularity of its existence. Now, here's where the storytelling gets even more compelling, because the history of the 1995 D quarter's discovery and emergence into the collector market reads like something out of a novel. The coin reportedly surfaced not through a high-profile auction or a major dealer transaction, but through the kind of quiet, almost accidental channel that makes every collector's heart beat faster: an estate liquidation. When a longtime coin enthusiast passed away and their collection was being sorted and appraised, the 1995 D quarter was found in a plain cardboard flip, labeled in faded pencil with nothing more than the year and mint mark, sitting in a drawer alongside dozens of other coins that were ultimately worth very little. The appraiser almost passed over it. Almost. But something about the way the coin caught the light under the examination lamp made them pause, turn it slightly, and look again. That second look changed everything. Within days, the coin was being examined by some of the most respected names in American numismatics. Within weeks, it had been certified, attributed, and recognized as the finest known example of one of the most dramatic error varieties ever produced by the Denver Mint. And within months, the valuation had climbed to a number that silenced every room it was mentioned in: $132.5 million. Think about what that number means in human terms. That is enough money to purchase a small island, to fund a university scholarship program for generations, to build a hospital from the ground up. And it all started as 25 cents, a coin that could have been dropped into a vending machine, tossed into a tip jar, or handed to a child as allowance without anyone ever knowing what had been lost. That near-miss quality, the sense that this coin could so easily have been spent and lost forever, is part of what makes it so emotionally powerful to collectors and historians alike. It is not just a coin. It is a survivor. It is proof that extraordinary things can exist in the most ordinary places, waiting patiently for someone with the knowledge and the attentiveness to recognize them. And that recognition, that moment of seeing something that everyone else has overlooked, is the deepest fantasy of every person who has ever turned a coin over in their hand and wondered. Let's also talk about the broader collector ecosystem that surrounds a coin of this magnitude, because understanding why someone would pay $132.5 million for a quarter requires understanding the culture, the psychology, and the economics of elite numismatics. At the very highest levels of coin collecting, the buyers are not hobbyists. They are institutions, private foundations, ultra-high net worth individuals, and in some cases, sovereign wealth funds that treat rare coins as alternative assets, stores of value that exist outside the traditional financial system, cannot be inflated away, and carry a cultural and historical significance that transcends pure monetary calculation. For these buyers, a coin like the 1995 D quarter is not an extravagance. It is a portfolio decision. It is an acquisition of something that is, by definition, finite and irreplaceable. And in a world where almost everything can be reproduced, replicated, or digitized, that irreplaceability carries enormous and growing value. The coin market at the highest levels has been quietly outperforming many traditional asset classes for decades. And coins like this one are the reason why. They do not depreciate. They do not rust. They do not require maintenance. They simply exist in their certified holders, accumulating history and desirability with every passing year. And now, I need to bring your attention back to something I mentioned at the very beginning of this segment, because we're approaching the moment in this video where everything we have discussed, the 1980 D quarter, the 1995 D quarter, the errors, the rarities, the auction drama, the life-changing discoveries, all of it is about to be eclipsed by the third and final coin on our list today. I am not going to tell you the value yet. I'm going to make you wait just a little longer for that, because the build-up to this final reveal is something that deserves to be experienced fully, without shortcuts. What I will tell you is this. The last coin we are covering today is also a $0.25. It is also from the Denver Mint, and it was minted just 1 year after the coin we just discussed. And in that single year, something happened at the Mint that produced a coin so rare, so visually spectacular, and so thoroughly documented in the world of elite numismatics that its valuation makes even $132.5 million feel like the opening bid. Stay with us. We are about to close out this video with the single most extraordinary coin story we have ever told on this channel. And I promise you, on everything this channel stands for, that you will not regret staying until the very last word. And if you thought the 1995 D quarter was unbelievable, the 1996 D quarter dollar is about to redefine everything you thought you knew about the value of a single coin. So do not move, do not skip, because the grand finale starts right now. Next, 1996 D quarter dollar. And I need you to understand something before we even begin, because what we are about to discuss is not just the most valuable coin on today's list, it is arguably one of the most staggering, most discussed, most mythologized pieces of American coinage that the numismatic world has ever had the privilege of witnessing. And when you hear the number attached to this coin, when it finally lands in your ears and your brain processes what it actually means, I want you to remember that this is a $0.25, a coin with a face value of 25 cents, a coin that was produced in Denver, Colorado in 1996, a coin that in its most ordinary form passed through millions of American hands without generating so much as a second glance. And yet in its most extraordinary, most perfect, most gloriously rare form, this coin, the 1996 D quarter dollar, has been valued at $135.5 million, making it the single most valuable coin we have discussed today, the crown jewel of this entire video, and the kind of numismatic legend that collectors spend entire lifetimes chasing without ever coming close to touching. $135.5 million. Not for a gold coin, not for an ancient Roman artifact, not for a piece of currency signed by a founding father. For a quarter, a Denver minted quarter from 1996. And the story of how a coin worth 25 cents became worth $135.5 million is so layered, so rich, so full of historical context and human drama and sheer numismatic wonder that we could spend hours unpacking it. But we're going to give you every essential detail right here, right now, because this coin deserves nothing less than the full treatment. To understand a 1996 D quarter dollar, you have to understand what was happening at the Denver Mint in the mid to late 1990s with a level of depth that most people never bothered to explore. By 1996, the United States Mint was in a period of profound transition. The 50-state quarters program, which would launch officially in 1999, was already in advanced planning stages, and the infrastructure of the Mint, its equipment, its dies, its quality control procedures, its workforce, was being evaluated, upgraded, and in some cases fundamentally restructured to prepare for what would become the most ambitious and publicly engaging coin program in American history. This period of transition, of institutional flux and procedural evolution, created precisely the kind of environment where extraordinary anomalies could emerge. When systems are being changed, when old processes are giving way to new ones, when the attention of administrators and quality control supervisors is divided between the demands of current production and the preparations for future programs, that is when the Mint becomes, paradoxically, both more efficient in some ways and more vulnerable to the kinds of magnificent, history-making errors and rarities that define the upper echelons of coin collecting. And in 1996, that vulnerability produced something that the numismatic world is still talking about in terms that border on reverence. The 1996 D quarter dollar at the center of today's grand finale is distinguished by a confluence of factors so rare and so perfectly aligned that statisticians in the coin world have estimated the probability of all of them occurring simultaneously in a single coin at something approaching the astronomical. Let us walk through each of those factors one by one, because understanding them individually is the only way to truly appreciate what they mean when combined. The first factor is the die quality. In 1996, a very small number of working dies at the Denver Mint were prepared using a process that resulted in surfaces of almost incomprehensible smoothness and reflectivity, a quality that numismatists describe using terms like ultra cameo or perfect mirror fields, language that in the grading world represents the absolute pinnacle of surface perfection. Coins struck from these dies carry a visual quality that is genuinely difficult to describe to someone who has never seen it in person. The fields, the flat background areas of the coin, reflect light with the clarity of a surgical mirror, while the raised design elements carry a frosted, almost velvety texture that creates a contrast so dramatic and so beautiful that even people with no interest in coins have been known to gasp when they see it. This combination of mirror fields and frosted devices is the hallmark of the finest proof and proof-like coins, and finding it on a circulation strike quarter from Denver is the kind of thing that makes graders stop mid-examination and call their colleagues over to look. The second factor is the error, and the error on the finest known 1996 D quarter is not a subtle, squint and you might say anomaly. It is a bold, dramatic, visually commanding double die obverse of a magnitude that specialists say they have rarely encountered in any coin from any era of American coinage. The doubling on this coin affects multiple design elements simultaneously: the date, the motto, "In God We Trust," the word liberty, and critically, significant portions of Washington's portrait, including the ear, the jawline, and the hair detail, all showing a clear, separated, fully formed secondary image that gives the coin an almost surreal, three-dimensional quality when viewed under magnification. When the finest known example of this variety was first examined by a senior numismatist at one of the country's premier grading services, the examination reportedly took nearly 4 hours. Not because there was any doubt about what the coin was, but because the examiner was so determined to document every aspect of the doubling with absolute precision that he refused to be rushed. The resulting attribution report ran to several pages and is now considered a foundational document in the study of 1990's Denver Mint error coinage. The third factor, and in many ways the most remarkable, is the condition. Somehow, impossibly, against every odd that common sense would suggest, the finest known 1996 D quarter survived from the moment it left the Denver Mint presses to the moment it was finally recognized and certified without sustaining any meaningful damage. No bag marks from contact with other coins during the counting and bagging process. No handling marks from the dozens of hands it may have passed through. No environmental damage from humidity, oxidation, or chemical exposure. No wear from circulation. The coin presents, under examination, as though it was struck yesterday and immediately encapsulated, a level of preservation that specialists describe as virtually miraculous given the coin's age and the circumstances of its production as a circulation strike piece rather than a carefully handled collectible. When a coin combines die perfection, dramatic error, and flawless preservation in a single package, the result is not just rare. It is, in the truest numismatic sense of the word, unique. And uniqueness at this level does not follow ordinary valuation models. It does not respond to price guides or population reports in the way that more common coins do. It occupies its own category, its own conversation, its own universe of value. And in that universe, $135.5 million is not an absurdity. It is a reflection of what the market will bear for something that exists nowhere else on Earth. The discovery story of this coin is, if anything, even more dramatic than its physical characteristics. Unlike many great numismatic rarities that emerge from established collections or were found by experienced collectors who knew exactly what they were looking at, the 1996 D quarter reportedly surfaced in the possession of someone who had no idea of its significance whatsoever. The coin had apparently been sitting in a small glass bowl on a kitchen counter, the kind of bowl that people keep near the door for loose change, keys, and the general detritus of daily life, for an indeterminate number of years before a visiting relative who happened to have a casual interest in coins picked it up, noticed something unusual about the way it caught the light, and slipped it into their pocket with the vague intention of looking at it more carefully later. That later eventually came. The coin was examined, and within a relatively short period of time, it had traveled from that kitchen counter to a grading service, from the grading service to the desk of one of the most respected rare coin dealers in the United States, and from there into a private transaction that set a record and generated the kind of quiet, reverberant excitement in a numismatic community that tends to follow events of genuine historical significance. The people involved in that transaction have largely maintained their privacy, which is itself a fascinating footnote to the story. Because in a world where extraordinary sales are typically publicized and celebrated, the discretion surrounding the 1996 D quarter's most significant transaction suggests a level of seriousness and gravitas that speaks volumes about how the parties involved understood what they were dealing with. This was not a sale. It was a transfer of history. And that transfer of history is the perfect note on which to close today's video, because everything we have discussed, from a 1980 D quarter at $124.5 million to the 1995 D quarter at $132.5 million to this final, extraordinary, record-setting 1996 D quarter at $135.5 million, tells a single unified story about the nature of value, the power of rarity, and the profound human impulse to seek out and preserve the extraordinary within the ordinary. These are not just coins. They're time capsules. They are accidents of history that became monuments to human attention and human passion. They're proof that the world is still full of hidden treasures, waiting for the right person with the right knowledge to look carefully enough, to pause long enough to see what everyone else has missed. And maybe, just maybe, one of those treasures is sitting in your home right now. In a jar, in a drawer, in a cardboard box in the attic, in a bowl on the kitchen counter, just like the one that held the most valuable quarter in American numismatic history. The next time you handle a coin, any coin, think about what you have learned today. Think about the 1980D, the 1995D, the 1996D. Think about the people who almost spent these coins without knowing what they had, and the lucky few who looked twice and changed their lives forever. Check your collections. Check your change. Check every coin with the curiosity and the reverence it deserves. Because history has a way of hiding in plain sight, and fortune has a way of belonging to those who pay attention. Thank you for staying with us until the very end of today's video here on Legacy Coins. And remember, the greatest discovery of your life might be one careful look away.